Welcome to Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing, one of the fastest growing real estate investing podcasts in the world. What if you could learn from experienced real estate investors? Find out what got them to where they are now. Get insight into their daily habits and take these insights to inspire your own growth. Each episode, Jonathan Green shares an in-depth look at the mindful approach to real estate investing. Jonathan is a lifelong real estate investor and the founder of Streamline, a data-driven, investor-friendly, independent real estate brokerage located in Madison, New Jersey. Whether you're looking to start from scratch, get to the next level, or just for a straightforward and honest approach to real estate investing, this is the free mentorship program you can take with you anywhere. Now, here's Jonathan.
Thanks for showing up for another episode of Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing, as we're in our transition to financial mindfulness. And that's what I have for you today, an episode about why I stopped chasing deals and started building wealth. All the differences between chasing and building is what this is about, and it's not just about me, it's definitely about you. You're going to hear all about it right now. This is episode 364 of Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing, and I'm coming at you with a solo episode as we transition to widen out the scope of this podcast. This one is called Why I Stopped Chasing Deals and Started Building Wealth. But it's not just about me. This is really advice for you based on my personal experience. And what I found from feedback from the solo episode is that it's really helpful for people to learn from what I've done. It doesn't mean you have to do it my way or do it the opposite of me if you're looking for the opposite result, but it makes it more connectable to hear directly from me about things that I've done wrong, things that I've done right, what I would do now if I were you, and that depends on a lot of things. So this is how it's going to go as we start to transition into a little bit more financial mindfulness. It'll always have that real estate twinge and focus, but we want to talk with people about building wealth as a whole and how real estate is a part of that. So I went through and worked with my project on Claude to give me some bullet points for the episode. And then I'm obviously going to drop in mostly all of my experience and things that have come up based on the bullet points that I think will help you in this solo episode. Let's do it. So the first bullet point that I have is about collecting deals. It says the moment you realize you're collecting deals, not building anything, I think that can happen to a lot of people. Specifically for me, it happened when I was flipping. I was never a high volume flipper, but there was a time when I was just doing 2 flips at the same time. It's probably, 8 years ago, maybe. And I was turning out really good products, I think. I mean, I thought I was doing a good job. I still believe that. But sometimes you just mismanage where you're going with your list price, because I was the agent as well, and what the market is telling you for a certain type of property. So I did well on one that I was doing in Belleville. I'm in New Jersey. And that one sold pretty quickly, but didn't get a ton of offers at the time. And I was completing another one in Montclair at the time, but that one was a 2-bed, 1.5 bath kind of condo alternative. I still think it's one of my best renovations ever, but I kind of flubbed the pricing on that one. And as I flubbed the initial pricing, I went too low, and then I was getting offers at that price, and then I wanted more, which is, usually very possible in Montclair, but because this is a unique product as a 2-bedroom single family house, it wasn't working out. I ended up doing fine, but over the whole course of that project, I got a red card and was delayed 3 months. It just took forever. It took about 16 months, I think, from door to door. So I had to keep paying out over my margin payments that I was doing. So it just wasn't a good experience. I probably broke even if I was lucky. And that's kind of the time that I realized that I was collecting more than building. And I think it's common for people who scale up with single family units or multifamilies, and then they realize, they have 6 properties, but 2 of them suck. And they don't really want to get rid of them at a loss, but they're also kind of the anchor around their neck. And I got there, I think, running 2 at the same time, even though I'm not somebody, if you've listened to podcasts at all, I don't go there every day I usually have a project manager. I was more around on these two because it was still earlier when I started to flip again more as an adult, as like an older adult. But I feel like I was a little bit, I wouldn't say I was over my skis, but I was a little bit overconfident with the towns, and I was a little too loose with what I was allowing the contractors to do. That's why I got a red card. Um, and I took on some projects that had some anomalies. The Montclair one had a foundation issue, and I think all of the problems on that project lead to how I handled the foundation, who I hired, what they did. It was a disaster. Was not pleased with the work, and it kind of played into how everything else happened. And that is where you feel like you're collecting deals. I felt, oh, cool. I'm an agent. I got 2 flips going. I have a whole history of flipping in real estate. This seems good. I can keep this engine running. And after that, I didn't think I wanted to keep that engine running. It just was too long of a process and too stressful. I did end up flipping a couple more after that, one in Verona and then one in Montville. And I haven't flipped at all recently because the prices aren't good enough for me to make the margins that I want, which I don't do a flip unless I'm going to make 100 grand. That's it. I just not going to do it. So there has to be a good spread for me. I have to be able to see something that other people can't see because there's a lot of flippers and builders and contractors in the area who will outbid me, which is fine. But if I'm going to bid up for something, I'm going to go get it and make sure that I'm pulling in 6 figures in the end. So I think that's something you have to look at yourself in the mirror and say, are you, collecting properties or are you building wealth? That's what this episode is about. And if you're collecting properties that aren't doing anything for you and you don't like them, you need to get rid of them. It just doesn't matter. I mean, if it's cash flowing and it's that annoying, just let it be someone else's cash flow and use that as a presentation to make more money on your sale. You just don't want properties that drive you crazy. It will get you out of real estate faster than you can imagine. The next one is kind of a conduit to the first one. It's how the more doors mindset kept me busy but not wealthy. Fortunately, I was never an advocate of doors culture. I've never in my life known how many doors I had or owned, and I own lots of different properties with different numbers of units, industrial, mini mall. Didn't own multifamily, but had a lot of single families. So I own some hybrid properties that would count as multiple doors, but I grew up before door counting was a thing. Didn't really ever think about it. I still don't think about it. I still don't know, even though I don't own a lot now. It's just not something that ever was a big deal for me. I didn't think it was impressive to own more doors, but I understand why social media culture made it that way. I can tell you most people who lead with the amount of doors are not, those doors aren't as great as they seem. It's just a management thing. I mean, the more doors you own, the more you have to manage or the more you have to pay to manage. So more doors, more headaches. I always told people who are saying, well, if I can afford a 2-family, why don't I just get a 4-family? I'm like, well, yeah, there's good things about that. That's 4 streams of income, but it's also 4 furnaces, 4 hot water heaters, and 4 opportunities for floods or fires. So these are all things that you have to consider when you're counting your doors. Do you really want more doors or you just want to start building wealth in a different way? It's the same way as someone who said, would you rather have 10 properties that cash flow $100 or 1 property that cash flows $1,000 a month? Personally, I would choose the one at $1,000 a month just because of the upkeep. But I know there's plenty of people who would choose the 10 for the potential appreciation windfall if they all go that way. But that's a lot of things to manage for $100 a month, in my opinion. And again, if you have those 10 at $100 a month and your furnace breaks, you're not making a profit on any of those for several years. So that's the way that I look at that. So I think if you've been invested in doors culture, stop. The trajectory of this podcast and the book that I'm writing, same titles, and in the art of real estate investing, are not for the people who count doors. It's not going to appeal to you. If you're trying to show off to other people, you may not think you are, but if you do a real deep self-analysis, you might realize, okay, maybe I am a little. Not going to appeal to you either. It's not meant for everybody. It's kind of a more nuanced version of what real estate investing and mindfulness is and how they combine to form a wealth building strategy. And again, that's what this is. Stop chasing deals, start building wealth. I've done it. I'm not above it. I could still do it again, just because I could get into one of those cycles where I think I'm doing something well and just bite off more than I can chew. So I want to talk to you about what chasing looks like. It could be adrenaline. It's a lot of FOMO, scoreboard mentality, which is doors culture. So it's really chasing versus building. Chasing, you're trying to keep up with someone or something. It's usually someone who's doing better than you, or you want to keep up and have something more to someone on social media. And when I was doing more flips, I was doing more videos. So it was like, oh, my YouTube content's pretty sweet. I'm going through, my own flips, and there's the journey. And I did like that part of it. But also, it's the potential for more problems, potential for more criticism. And the more that you put your scoreboard up there, the more people want to trash it. And yeah, I may be one of those people. I could trash a scoreboard. I don't really care about the numbers. I want to know what the numbers are earning and what their appreciation potential is and what the asset is. And if it has any capex, because if you have something with a lot of capex, you could think you have a really sweet scoreboard and you'll go from, 25 to 0 pretty quickly. So I think, you really have to start to phase out the kind of adrenaline rush of getting a property, because a lot of people who get that strong adrenaline rush also immediately get cold feet. They like to win. They don't like to follow through. And that's not a great place to be. If you have a fear of missing out, you have to do a deep dive on yourself and, figure out like, what are you missing and why are you chasing? Because the feeling of chasing is terrible. If you just think about relationships, like if you like somebody and you want them to be your partner, but they don't like you as much as you like them, and you're constantly chasing, that is terrible. You never feel like you're good enough. You can't get them to pay attention to you. And the difference between that and building is when two people, at least like each other in the same ballpark, and you're building on a relationship or trying to build to a relationship together. And that's what you want from real estate too. When you're looking at your portfolio, again, we're transitioning to more of like a wealth building portal and via real estate. And to do that, you need a strong foundation, and you build a strong foundation with strong assets that make sense to you and that you like. So you don't get burned out on the assets, or you don't get excitable putting in your Instagram bio how many doors you have. If you have that, please take it down. It's so aggravating. It doesn't look good. It's not impressive. Someone asked me on my syndications, like, how many syndication doors do you have? And I know how many you have, but you're never going to see me publicly put that out there. It's just, I only own a very small percentage of those doors. So if you do the math, I don't know, what do I own? Like a couple doors? It's just kind of silly. Not trying to show off. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't help you. Your only goal for real estate should be to build wealth and then build generational wealth. Give yourself more opportunities by using leverage or using advanced leverage like HELOC after you have equity. Why else are you buying real estate? To live in, sure, but if you're going to live in it, you want the appreciation also. Anything else besides living in, you're trying to build wealth. And if you're building wealth for yourself, you're trying to build wealth for your future children or children. That's the point. I mean, that's what my dad did for me. And I've been fortunate enough to carry that legacy on, because I was never trying to chase something else. Again, at times in my career, I think that I was. But you grow and you figure out and you adjust your mindset. For me, I've focused a lot on mindfulness principles to kind of get my head right. And it's helped me a lot with some of the bullet points we're going to go over after this. This is a good one. The difference between being an active investor and a reactive one. I think you should know the difference, but active is you're really paying attention to everything. Active does not mean transacting. You don't have to be transacting to be an active investor. And that might surprise people because they have a very linear mindset. If you're active, you're actively vetting deals, saying yes or no. Maybe you go under contract on one and it fails, but you're doing it all the right way, not trying to snow anyone. You're building up your financial foundation so that you're well vetted. You're not spending all the money you have on one property. You're just active in the game. You're talking to other real estate investors. You listen to podcasts. You're reading real estate investing books. You're going to meetups. You're talking the talk and you're walking the walk. If you're reactive, you're basically just like a roller coaster. you get the real high, like we were just saying, you get that adrenaline rush of beating out 6 other people, and then you immediately think that you overpaid, you crap your pants, and then you try to do that at inspection to get out of the deal, and the seller's wise to your BS, and they call your number and point you to your limiting provisions where you said you were going to take it as is, and now you don't want to take it as is. And now you're in a little bit of a conundrum because you had big eyes and not as big enough stomach for it. And that happens. And that's what being reactive is. And being reactive in negotiations for investing is taking everything personally. If you have a big ego, you take everything personally. So every time somebody counters you, you feel that you're personally aggrieved. And I can tell you, I have been that person. I'm sure if you've listened to the podcast long enough, you've heard the story about my favorite house ever that I had in Florida that I listed for 2.3 million because I thought I knew better than my realtor, which I did not. I wasn't licensed at the time. I did know a lot about real estate, but I was being the worst seller that I would not want to work with now. Got an offer in the first week for 1.4 million. I was personally aggrieved because I was being a reactive person. And I said, no, F that. I'm not taking that garbage. I won't even counter. P.S. Then 2008 dropped and I ended up selling it for under $1 million. And it sat forever and ever and ever because I was stubborn. And that was reactivity. Could I have been more open to my real estate agent at the time and given her a chance to really show me the comps? Yeah, I should have, but I was being a reactive person and kind of a douchebag. I really was. So when I ended up closing, I blamed myself only. There was 0 other people to blame. So whatever the delta that I lost, it was on me. It was my decision to do that. I decided on the price. I decided to reject the offer forcefully. I made my own bet and I had to lie in it. And I'm comfortable doing that because I don't make a lot of bad deals. But when stuff happens, and again, this was maybe wouldn't have happened but for 2008, but I wasn't selling it for 2.3 million, even if 2008 didn't come around. That first offer at 1.4, it was probably pretty solid, but I think I bought it in the 7s and I built a $500,000 back house and pool and all this stuff. So I feel I was in that mindset that a lot of you have probably been in. Like I had spent so much money, but that didn't mean it was worth that. I wasn't looking at the comps. Just because I was in for 1.3 didn't mean it was worth 1.3. The market tells you what's worth 1.3. So I either needed to wait it out, but I had to sell because I was moving back to New York. So, my bad. But that's the difference between being active and reactive. Active is paying attention to the data, staying on top of it, having conversations with the people who know best, and then weighing your options. And reactive is just reacting on your ego and personalization and feeling personally aggrieved and like everything's about you. Not a great place to be in. And you're never going to be a good negotiator and certainly not a good investor if you let your emotions take over and your ego run your life. Let's see what else we got here. What your portfolio actually looked like when you slowed down and assessed it honestly. Yes, that's an interesting one. My portfolio has always been like a grab bag because my dad left my sister and I a lot of properties that we managed together, and they were just like a big potpourri of randomness. Industrial strip malls, single families, townhouses, a lot of different stuff that we traded over the years. So I had an interesting portfolio that I've whittled down over time, and now I'm building it back up in a different way. And I think the biggest change for me when I slowed down and assessed it honestly at my age, which was over 50 at the time I made these decisions, I decided to be less active and more passive in the true sense of the word. And that's when in 2024, I started investing in syndications. And since then, I've invested in 5 syndications, 4 multifamily, 1 wellness hotel. And I really enjoy it. I'm a big advocate. I've done an episode on it that you can look up on passive investing and why I started to do it. And I think that that's really the strategy that changed for me. I slowed down. I looked at my whole portfolio. My sister didn't want in on any real estate anymore, so we were just gunning those New York properties. And a lot of those properties, like we had tenants in them for 20 years, so they weren't nice. Like they were 20 years old. So we were just smart about it. We just took what we can get. I had a great realtor in Westchester. Now I'm licensed in New York, but she did a great job for us on all three of the last three properties that we sold, or four maybe. And we just took what we were going to get. I've learned my lessons being a bad seller, and we weren't for these properties. So slowing down and assessing what my overall portfolio is made me address my overall goals. And that I address with creative planning, who handles my money and my stocks and everything. And that's when I've been on more of a wealth building journey, I think, over the last many years. But I think I was always on a wealth building journey, but now I think I'm on a more relaxed wealth building journey, building things that my kids can benefit and that aren't quick hits like flips where you get paid and then you have to, move the snowball into something else. So investing in syndications helped me slow down, take a broad overview, and get invested in asset classes that I was never going to do on my own. And I think that's something you need to look at whatever age you're at. It's like, how much is the active investing taking out of your life? Like, is your spouse or partner mad at you because you're always going to unclog a toilet when you're supposed to be hanging out with your kids? Do your kids miss you because your side job is taking as much time as your regular job? Those are things you want to consider before you get kicked out and all your stuff's on the street one day because you just lost yourself inside the side business and the FOMO of trying to be something that was bigger than you were ever going to be. You don't have to, no one has to know what you do. Read The Millionaire Next Door. Knowing what you do is just kind of an ego thing. The most successful investors are just doing their thing and not worried about too much about what anybody else is doing at all. Hey, it's Jonathan. I hope you're enjoying this solo episode about why I stopped chasing deals and started building wealth. And if you're building wealth as a real estate investor and you have rental properties and you don't know really what you're doing on the landlord side, RentRedi can help. You can use my link, which is RentRedi, redi.com/L/Zen, and you can get started for a discount. RentRedi is built for investors who take action. This is a landlord helper. You're welcome. Let's get back to the show. Next one is how patience became a strategy, not a personality trait. Just goes to what we talked about. I think when you address being patient in real estate investing, you're looking at things that are longer term. And for me, that's syndications. I know that I'm keeping the money away from myself. If I put that money into syndications, I'm not going to use it to try to flip a house. And if I deplete the resources and put them into things that are asset builders where I'm also getting paid, because 4 of my 5 pay, that's what I like. That's what I'm growing into now at 55, the double nickel. That's what really works for me now. Am I under contract on a short-term rental with my brother? Yes, because I think I can handle one active thing at a time and then see if it's something I like. And if not, farm out and figure it out. I'm not buying an asset that's bad. I'm buying a good asset. So I can do a lot of different things with that. I could long-term rent it if I want. We probably do fine. So I think that patience for me has always been a big thing. I've learned more and more as I got older to be more patient about everything. In life, things don't always have to be quick. That quick fix mentality is just not going to work for me. And I don't think it's working for a lot of people. It's the FIRE movement, moving too fast, trying to get everything done in a second, short-term thinking just doesn't work for me. And it probably doesn't work for you. And even if it's working for you, it can work a little bit. It's not going to work for you in the long term because short-term thinking just doesn't work over the long term. They have completely opposite goals. The shift from deal flow to cash flow thinking, for me, it's appreciation thinking. Fortunately, I was always an appreciation investor. That's what I learned from my dad. I bought properties that I thought were strong assets that were undervalued in areas that I thought were undervalued. And then I watched them appreciate. That's probably what I'm best at of anything, is buying appreciating assets. I'm also very good at that for my clients as an agent. I send, things out. I post them on LinkedIn all the time of how much my clients are up, 3, 4, 500 grand over just a few years, $1 million. I have some people up, over 6 to 10 years. And that's just buying good assets and understanding the geography. So I think I was always good at that. But deal flow is so much different than cash flow. Deal flow is you getting your hands on a lot of stuff, looking at a lot of stuff, which is good, but almost like making too many offers and then pulling out on some. Deal flow to me is the person who's like, I want to send out 10 offers a week on junk just to see if I get one. And then you get the worst one and you don't even want it. It's just not a good use of your time. And cash flow is something that you definitely want, but when you're in a high interest rate or higher interest rate environment, your cash flow is not going to look the same. And you have to kind of move that into your projections and see if it works. So for me, I always want to look at appreciation. I'm an asset hunter. I want to buy assets that are going to appreciate over time and that I look at and I'm like, that's a solid investment. It's a solid, like, it's just like you don't buy a house that's about to fall down unless the price matches that. Or if you think there's so much wrong with it, the price has to match that. So if I'm going to pay up for a house at any value, I want it to match the price and I want to feel good about the property I'm buying, about the asset and the asset where it stands in the neighborhood and the location and the state, all of that. You want to be in the path of progress at all times. And that could be demographic changes, geographic changes. All of those things are things that you want to watch. Why most investors confuse activity with progress? Well, because if you go back to what I was saying when I'm videoing my flips, activity looks like you're doing a lot. You just may be going backwards sometimes. If I look at how I've done deals, activity is not always progress. Sometimes you regress because you made bad decisions and got too full of yourself. How many people bit off too much more than they can chew, flipping 1, 2, and thinking they were going to build a flipping, and then they realize they're on their third or fourth at a time, and their one crew can't match up. So then they hire another crew. They don't really know that crew. Second crew is terrible. People leaving all the time. Now all the jobs are going to slow down. And that's the difference right there between activity and progress. You may look active and it may look like you're doing a lot on social media. That doesn't mean that you're making progress and it doesn't mean that you're making money. Activity actually can lose you money. So sometimes I think, especially now in this culture, people are creating more activity. So they have more activity to share. But again, that doesn't create progress. Sometimes you're actually regressing on that. What wealth actually means when you strip away the metrics. I think wealth is different for every person, how you think of it, how you were brought up, how your family taught you what wealth means. To me, wealth is, part freedom, the freedom to do what you want when you want. To me, that's what wealth is. And that's what I think people are chasing, not financial freedom, time freedom. True wealth gives you time freedom. You allow yourself to do the things that you want, travel when you want, close your office when you want. I think that's what we're all in search of. That doesn't mean retirement. I don't want to retire early. I'm already old. I don't want to retire. I like doing stuff. So I'm not chasing sitting on my ass all day at all. I've been on time freedom for a lot of years, but in order to stay on time freedom, I have to make sure that I'm managing my wealth the correct way and using both short-term and long-term thinking and diversifying my portfolio between stocks, startups, real estate, any other things that I like, collectibles. These are things that I really do to kind of look at the whole package of diversification and see if it's suiting me well for the future. And I have annual meetings with creative planning to go over how my portfolio looks. When I open a new business, that usually loses money for a while. So I'm kind of like that even Steven Seinfeld skit. I remember when I had my galleries for 6 years, I dunked a whole bunch of money loss into that. I lost a lot of money on them. I had a great time, learned a lot about real estate and aesthetics. So, I paid for the education of that. But a lot of businesses, you're going to lose money and eventually make money. It's just part of the business cycle. So for me, wealth is time freedom. It's the ability to be a decision maker on my finances. But wealth is continual. You don't just get to a certain point and you say, oh, I'm wealthy. I don't have to do anything anymore. Because at any time, your stocks could get cut in half if you don't have a company who's watching and selling and buying when they need to. Anything can happen. Banks can fail. You just have to always be moving in the direction of achieving more wealth And a lot of wealth is built by compound interest. When you have enough of it, you just want to let it bake in the oven. Let it marinate a little bit. Let that sauce get on the chicken for about 30 minutes before you cook it. Going to taste better. And your wealth will achieve more if you can just let it marinate, bake it up, then let it sit out for 10 minutes before you bite into that croissant that obviously is going to be too hot when you pull it out of the oven. And the middle is still going to be a little bit undone, which, actually tastes pretty good, but maybe that's just me. I'm a little weird. How did mindfulness change? What role did mindfulness play in changing how I evaluate opportunities? That's a really important one for me. I think the more mindful I get, the more able I am to say no. There's no deal that I want enough to actually even worry a little bit. I just don't care. I will walk away from any deal. You can listen to my show about all the deals I've had in the last few years that failed. And they all come down to one thing. I don't need the deal. At the time I go into contract, I want it, but I don't want it that bad. If it goes away, it doesn't have any difference in my life. Nothing changes if I don't get that deal. And that doesn't mean I haven't lost deals that I should have kept and that did well. I'm sure I've done that a million times. But that's someone else's good fortune then. It doesn't have anything to do with me. I can't have lost something that I never owned. So if I get out of a deal and then the next person grabs a deal and crushes it, I didn't lose anything. I could have made more money, but I didn't lose anything. I just lost an opportunity. But I personally, because of my mindfulness background, I chose to pass on that opportunity. And in the mindful set, if someone does well on it, great for them. Good karma. Everybody can do well. I love when I do a flip and then I sell it. I get a price that I'm comfortable with. And then 2 years later, they sell it. And because of my good flip, they do better. Great job by them. I don't think, I should have waited 2 more years. I don't really care. I'm on using the money for something else. So if you can get more mindful, it reduces your ego, it reduces your FOMO, it reduces your anxiety. It brings you a sense of calm, which is the Zen part of Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing. So when someone's playing around in a deal, you can just say, yeah, that's fine. Okay, yeah, sure, I'll cancel. Do it all the time. I was just explaining to buyers this morning, if you're dealing on a new build and you're dealing with the builder's agents who work there full time for the builders and not your traditional real estate agent, pretty easy to me. You just walk in, tell them what you want, they say no, and then you leave, and you'll get a call within 20 seconds because they have a quota to match for filling out a development if you're buying townhouses or condos. It's a no-brainer. It works every time. It's just having the patience to walk out and let it happen. And if they don't call, yeah, you have to be okay with that. Your ability to walk away is the best power you have in real estate, but you have to do it. And you have to be okay that if you do it and they don't call, that's the way it goes. The second that you put your foot back in the ring after you've walked away, you're the mark. You will always be the mark if you say you're leaving and then you put your foot back in. Don't do it. Be more mindful. Choose to walk away. Accept the consequences. If someone comes back, great. If not, you're on to bigger and better things. What did I stop doing that made the biggest difference? I think it's chasing. Yeah, I think there's times now, even at 55, where I have to admit the things that I post are not necessarily for me anymore. When you have businesses, you're doing posts to achieve business ends. But yeah, if I just look at my personal Instagram and what I post, yeah, I don't know. Am I trying to impress people? I'd say no, but I also would say I'm not trying to impress people. I think I'm being genuine, but I'm not. I don't care what people think, but it doesn't mean I'm not like interested in hoping someone says, "Oh, that's pretty cool." Why do I have a podcast? It's not because I want to make a lot of money. This has been independently run since the start. Never taken any money from anyone else for the podcast. I paid it out of my pocket. So why do I do it? Because I really believe that it can help people. And that's why we're transitioning the branding kind of to be this more financial mindfulness, because I think it can just help more people. I don't think people are in touch with money, and we're at a time where there's inflation and money is harder to come by and houses are harder to come by. So I think being mindful about financial matters and talking about it openly is really going to help open the door for people. And honestly, if 80 people hate what I say and one person likes it and it helps them change their life, I'm okay with that. I hope that's not the ratio, but I'm fine with that. But I think everybody has to look in the mirror and say, why am I doing something? So I think what I stopped doing is probably being more performative and just being myself. I think on camera, I've always been myself. I post what I want, I do what I want. But there's always this time where you thought, like, I remember my coach one time saying to me, I think he was talking about me and my project manager at the time. He's like, you guys could definitely have a flipping show. I'm like, yeah, that would be awesome. He's like, it wouldn't be awesome. Your personality is like the last person who would want to have a house flipping show. You would literally punch everyone in the face. And I thought about it for a little while and I was like, yeah, I'd be on someone else's schedule. They would be telling me what to do and what to say. They'd be pushing makeup on my face. They would be putting fake people in with fake prices to make a TV show that was fake, even if it's like a little bit based on reality. And I had to separate myself from, wouldn't it be cool if I was one of those people, to realizing that my personality does not want to be famous at all. I don't really want more eyes on me. I'd like more people to learn from things that I say, but I don't, if someone doesn't get any value out of it, again, I'm okay with that. But yeah, I think stop chasing anything is really the biggest, tool that you can put in your bag. Don't chase, build. The investor you were trying to impress and why that stopped mattering. I think that's pretty much the same as what I just said. I don't know if I was that. No, actually, I think a lot of what I've done in real estate in this podcast was like to impress my dad, even though he passed away at 33. I think it was carrying on the legacy that he left me, and I know he'd be super proud of this. So I think I do a lot for that, but I also like it. I mean, I love real estate. I love talking about real estate. I like doing podcasts. I like writing. I'm excited about my new book that I'm working on. So I think it's exciting, but yeah, it's an homage to my dad, but also something where I want him to look from wherever he is and say like, wow, you've really taken another direction that he couldn't do. Because again, my dad was an attorney. I was an attorney. My dad was not a trial attorney. He would literally take a dump in his pants to go get out of a traffic ticket. And I did 250 jury trials to verdict. So he was always kind of excited about that and proud. And I think he'd feel the same about this podcast and how much I've talked about real estate and how much I've learned from other people about real estate, which is one of the greatest things about podcasts that you get to benefit from as an audience. I'm learning along with you. I learned about syndications from the podcast, then I invest in syndications. I've learned so much about all the asset classes and through the great guests that I've had. And I look forward to keep learning with you as we transition to this financial mindfulness with the real estate spin. This one really came up before, how slowing down made me be more selective and more profitable. Uh, I don't think in my investment journey, I don't think I'm more profitable now. I think probably if I kept flipping, I would technically be more profitable, but I would probably have like heart problems or more stress and anxiety. So for me, I would think I'm more like mindfully profitable, if that makes sense. My life is better. It doesn't mean that I'm richer. I think that I'm building wealth better now. If you know my story, after 2008, and I had two houses that took a dive because I was in Florida and I was going back and forth to open a gallery in New York. So after those two, I was worried about the market, and I took all of my stocks out of Merrill Lynch and just put them in cash and held them in cash for several years, where if I didn't do that, I probably would have earned an extra couple $1,000,000 from just letting it marinate and go through the cycle. But I got scared. And fortunately, I never did that again. So I learned from it. And now I let a lot of stuff cook in index funds, which has served me really well. I think I'm up 17% this year. So and that's money that I put there. My syndications are doing great. So I think slowing down I think for me, slowing down was moving from active to more passive investments so that I have more, not just index funds churning, because that's not real estate except for the REITs that I have. I I had real estate that was building wealth passively. And to me, that was exciting because I could get involved in bigger projects that I would never want to do. And that would be super stressful if I was a GP or one of the GPs on a 50 unit or a 256 unit or a wellness hotel. Like, I don't really want to go through the machinations of that day-to-day operations, but I love being a part of it from afar and reading what happens every month or quarter. Last thing, as we wrap this episode up, what building wealth actually requires that chasing deals never taught you? Well, I mean, goes to the last thing. Building wealth is a patience and long-term thinking. And I think if you're chasing, you're not doing it for the right reason. Like, you don't chase wealth. You can, but I don't think you'll succeed that way, because if you chase, it's like long-term. You want a quick fix, you want to get it, and then sometimes you don't even know what to do with it. It's why lottery winners, most of them lose all their money within a year. They didn't expect to have, a $20 million and then half in taxes, and then they buy a bunch of dumb shit, and then they're broke. So, I mean, that's common. That could be you. Again, I was saying in my last episode, as we were talking about the transition to this financial mindfulness, that, I've never been a gigantic proponent of the hero's journey. In a movie, yeah, but I'm not that excited by people who told me that they lost it all in 2008 and then built themselves back up. My question is, why'd you lose it all in 2008? Why did you over leverage? What tells me that you won't do it again? So to me, building wealth is learning those lessons from myself. It's not my problem what other people do, but I look at all the things that I've done in my life, the decisions I've made, that dumb one on the $2.3 million listing. Now I can take that to my clients and tell them as part of the story. And do they sometimes overlist? Yeah, sure. They don't always listen. And there's a price that I'm okay with, and there's a price I'm just going to pass because it's dumb. But also occasionally I'm proven wrong. Sometimes they price high and the market still responds because it's a great house. So, that's their decision. It's their decision on price. But, I think I just don't want to chase. I think the analogy to relationships is a great way to end this. I talked about it in the beginning. When you're chasing in a relationship, you're chasing someone who doesn't like you as much as you like them, or else you wouldn't have to chase them. So if you don't want to be in that mode with real estate, you have to build up your foundation and education and knowledge so you're not chasing. You want to be building something together. And again, before you're in a relationship with someone, you're just building that friendship relationship to see if it's going to be someone that you want to be with. And then if it is, you've already done the work, so you can kind of build together. Does it go off the track sometime? Sure. But you have a better foundation when you're focused on building instead of chasing. Chasing sucks. I don't know why anyone gets a high from chasing. It's terrible if you're always second or third in the race. Just watch Formula One and listen to them for the last 10 laps when they just can't make up the difference. Don't be like that. So, as we wrap up this episode, I just want to remind you, we're only publishing once a week now, so that'll be 4 or 5 times a month. It's going to come out on Wednesdays instead of Monday. This episode probably came out on a Wednesday. It's our first Wednesday release, so you'll see them on Hump Day instead. Hopefully, this gives you a way to catch up on the episodes you missed. You can go to zenandtheartofrealestateinvesting.com. You can search the guest directory. You can search by the episodes in order. There's tons of ways to search to find out what you may have missed. Check for asset classes. There's just a million ways that you can get a ton of information from going into our archive on the website. I really appreciate you being here, and I think you're going to be really excited about where we're going. I'll see you next episode. Thanks for sticking around to the end so you can get a preview of what's coming up on episode 365 of Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing. It's just me, how to think like a long-term investor when everything around you is noise. We're going to talk a lot about social media, clips, reels, and all the things that are creating noise in your head, including the things that you don't think are creating noise in your head. That's probably your own mindset. See you next episode.